What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackmine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 1 day away from taking on the Baltimore Ravens, a game that could decide the AFC North, could leave this season wide open for both of these teams heading in to the last 2 weeks of the season. We're diving into some changes in the injury report, a new and hopeful timeline for George Pickens, our weekly picks, because this is a massive one. But we're starting here. The Pittsburgh Steelers will not get an opportunity to sign, claim, or add Diontae Johnson prior to week 16 against the Baltimore Ravens. Why? Because, well, just like we said on Tuesday, the Baltimore Ravens have waited until 4 o'clock Eastern time on the nose to waive the former Pittsburgh Steeler, making it impossible for anybody to claim him until Monday morning at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Nick, Diontae probably isn't great, but he's probably at the same time happy not to be in Baltimore anymore. I'll ask you how you're doing. How you feel, my friend? And shocked because on Tuesday, conspiracy theory. On Friday, accurate.
Yeah, I did call you out on that one. I said that you were deep in conspiracy theory territory, but it turns out that you were 100% right. So you know what? I'll take the L on that one.
I don't think you were really. Yeah, you weren't pushing. You know,
I wasn't calling you names or anything,
no, but you were labeling it what it was. Yeah,
I just thought that you were a little out to lunch, and it turns out that I was the one out to lunch, not paying attention to what was going on. So Diontae Johnson, for him, it's good. You get an early start on a fresh start, right? You get away from a situation that was not good. But for the rest of the league, they understand what it was. They know who this guy used to play for, and well, they did exactly what you said they were going to do on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that it really is. Like, that's what I mean. I'm telling you, people, and you, like, you've some insight to it. Like, you've seen some things to the point where you understand they are a little crazy. The NFL is a little bit crazy, but like, you can't park across the street from the Pittsburgh Steelers practice facility. You can't do, if you're just a random person that just parks there and make a phone call, somebody will show up to tell you to leave immediately, within minutes. Why? Because they don't know what you're doing. They don't know if you're a member of the Baltimore Ravens or if you're not. And because of that, Diontae Johnson will wait until Monday to find his new team in the NFL. Will the Pittsburgh Steelers be it?
That's an intriguing question. I would think there's too much history there. And off the top of my head, it feels like there's too much history there. But at the same time, when you're as needy for talent as the Pittsburgh Steelers are, he wouldn't take as long to get acclimated to the building and the offense as you would expect from other wide receivers. And it's such a short track, it makes it more of a possibility. But I will say I still think there's just too much history there, and they got rid of him for a reason. So even if they're desperate for offense, I feel like that reason is still going to come up whenever this discussion inevitably happens on the South Side. It's going to happen, but I do think that there's going to just be a little bit too much history.
Yeah, I agree. I think if it was Tuesday, if it was Wednesday, if they had an opportunity to actually bring him back before this game, certainly there's a conversation to be had there. But where we stand, right, like, the Steelers aren't looking for drama. They're not looking for anything. And Diontae has done himself no favors for other teams since joining the Baltimore Ravens. At this point, I think he's almost blacklisted to where you go, nah, I think we're okay. I think every team agrees that they're okay. I don't expect Diontae Johnson to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. To be honest with you, I could see him signing with a team that believes they could take over a situation like this. Kansas City would be one of them, but they don't really have a need for a wide receiver right now. I don't know where he ends up. It also wouldn't surprise me if he ends up nowhere before the end of the season, and we're waiting on Diontae Johnson next year. Hell of a contract year for a guy that I argued for. I defended him probably way too much in the course of him getting traded, people talking about him being a distraction. I think I had his back maybe a little bit too hard in this entire course, and I turned out looking, well, like the guy who was talking about the conspiracy theory, because I'm trying to convince people that I wasn't saying Deontay Johnson was a great locker room addition for another team, even though he clearly was not. That's how we'll start the show here. Deontay Johnson is on his way out of Baltimore. He will not be there to say howdy to some old people or some old friends from Pittsburgh when they show up to M&T Bank Stadium tomorrow. Instead, he'll be waiting for Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern time to land with a new team. And yes, the Baltimore Ravens did 100% wait until Friday to make sure that the Pittsburgh Steelers did not get an opportunity to add their former wide receiver. Why? Not because they're not worried or they're worried because the Steelers would have another receiving option. No, because they're worried that Diontae would have given the Pittsburgh Steelers the Baltimore Ravens game plan, even though he hasn't been there in 2 weeks, before the game. That is what the NFL is, and I love moments where we get to see exactly what the NFL is. Now let's talk some Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens, for those who will not play, but will, I'll get it, remain on the active roster come Monday as well. Deshaun Elliott has been ruled out for the Pittsburgh Steelers, something that we saw coming yesterday. It was hard to believe that he was even listed as doubtful. He wasn't a guy that practiced all week. You looked at him and said he wasn't able to really practice the week before. Chances were he wasn't playing this week against the Ravens. Maybe Christmas, but even then, with limited turnaround, you just don't know when to expect Deshaun Elliott back on the field for the Steelers. Cam Sutton, DeMonte KZ will try to fill that role once again. Obviously a massive blow. We touched on it a lot yesterday. On the other side of that one, George Pickens, new timeline. Last night during Thursday Night Football, Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated drops coming back for Christmas. Optimistic that he's coming back for Christmas. I mean, I woke up to that one. I did not watch the game last night, which I should have. I know that's on me, but I was knee deep in Jack Frost. Okay. I love the Jack Frost movie and I was all into it. And next thing I knew, it was 11:30 and I was like, I'm going to bed. Coming back for Christmas. Small turnaround. You probably have 1 day of practice. It's probably a walkthrough, if that. Do you believe it? Do you think there's really an opportunity George Pickens can return to the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Kansas City Chiefs?
Oh, 100%. And I said this yesterday. It felt like they were getting him geared up this week, not for a game this Saturday, but they were practically getting him geared up for the game next week. They were trying to get him on track for that game next week and using these practices to do so, knowing that he was probably not going to go against the Baltimore Ravens, although they'd love him to go against the Ravens. But the fact that it is probably more realistic that, hey, if we get him on the right timetable, we can get him to be ready to go for next Wednesday, Steelers Chiefs on Netflix. That's what it felt like all week to me. And that's what, Albert Breer seems to think is going to happen for the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver. And honestly, I tend to agree.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I think that it makes sense. This game can decide a lot. So I'll ask you this. If they beat the Ravens, does that change for you?
Definitely. I think that he'd still get in because I don't think they want him to go without playing at all and then his first action being in the playoffs. But I think they would use him very sparingly against the Kansas City Chiefs if they indeed get the AFC North locked up. And of course, depending on how everything else goes and how far they can either climb or fall in that 1 through 4 range. I think that there's a chance, though, that they could be essentially locked into that 3 seed this weekend. And they say, we're going to get George out there just to get him out there a little bit, but we're really not going to utilize him as much as we typically would.
Yeah, I agree. And it goes kind of a surprising way because if the Houston Texans beat the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday or tomorrow, actually, then you look at it and you go, we got to play them against the Chiefs because you got to win against the Chiefs. You can't take a risk that the Houston Texans are going to climb and surpass you as that 3rd seed. And at the same time, you can't take a shot and say, well, what if something crazy happens and we do end up with the 1 seed, which is nearly impossible. I get it, but it's still a possibility. Meanwhile, if the Chiefs win, limited would be a good place to be. Like, okay, yeah, put him out there for a handful of snaps, get him ready, get him back into it, build that connection with Russ one more time, kind of build the offense or the confidence within the offense before the playoffs once again. Just get everybody accustomed and rolling, get all the naysayers on the outside to kind of shut up and quiet down. And then you go into the postseason. I think that works too. But I do think it kind of pushes a sense of urgency if the Chiefs lose to say things are still wide open in both directions to the point where we can't take a risk because the Steelers don't want the 4th seed. Nobody's sitting around in Pittsburgh going, you want to know what would be fine? The 4 seed. No, the 3 seed's fine. The 2 seed's okay. The 4 seed, I mean, you get one guaranteed playoff game or one guaranteed home game. And then chances are after that one, like if you're really sitting around going, LA is going to win, Denver is going to win, maybe Baltimore, that would be one that you could rely on, but maybe Baltimore, those odds are just too small. Whereas, and if it's the other way around, you could look at it and say, there's a chance we could climb ourselves into something bigger and give ourselves 2 home games, which would be absolutely massive. I agree with you. I think they do. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say even closer than that when looking at this, not as a, could you get a second home game?
Yeah.
Your matchup, if you're the 4 seed, is more than likely the Ravens. Playing a divisional opponent for the 3rd time in a year is extremely difficult. I'm not saying that it's a walk in the park to play the Chargers or the Denver Broncos at this stage of the season, but it's probably a much better matchup than going up against the Baltimore Ravens for a 3rd time this season and for the 2nd time in about 3 weeks at this point. So I do think that it's going to be very important if they do get the AFC North title to still make sure that they have that 3rd seed as well.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. That's the last thing you want to do is play Baltimore twice within, what would it be? It would be 8 weeks that you're facing the Baltimore Ravens. Like you're playing a risk. And if you beat them twice, that risk is even higher. Because at that point, like you're playing fool's gold here. At some point, the house is going to win. You're going to fall, and you don't want to do that. So I agree with you. I think that the way this sets up, you are avoiding the 4 seed, whereas if Kansas City wins, you could kind of, I don't want to say take your foot off the gas, but ease your way into it a little bit more than you would the other way around. Either way, I do expect George Pickens to play on Christmas. I do think that is a realistic timeline for the superstar wide receivers return, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, man, they need them. Even if they get Diontae, which I'm obviously joking. They're not getting Diontae. But even if they get Diontae Johnson. Let's talk Russell Wilson real fast before we dive into picks and everyone's questions here on good old Friday. My days are all messed up. Is your week weird? Is it a weird week?
Yeah. I mean, Christmas being next week changes everything, not to mention the fact that we tune our bodies to the Pittsburgh Steelers and their schedule, and it is all over the place. So yes, it feels weird.
It doesn't make any sense simply because it should all be backwards. Like this should be Saturday. We should not be doing this. It's Friday. I almost forgot about it. It was 3:00 and I was like, oh my gosh, dude, I forgot about the podcast completely here. And here we are. So let's talk some Russell Wilson. According to Jordan Schultz, excuse me, I'm still getting my voice back. I actually listened to some TikToks yesterday of us, man, and I sound terrible. So I apologize to everybody. I'm getting there. I promise I don't speak all day simply so that I could talk on this podcast, but I'm getting there. He said, quote, the Steelers and specifically Mike Tomlin view Russell Wilson not merely as a bridge quarterback, but potentially as the key component of their future as well. He believes that they're going to hand him a 3-year, $100 million deal at the end of this season. We've talked about this a number of times this year, but it changes constantly. And where the Steelers stand right now, their offense is nothing exciting. Their passing game is very scary. And you got people who are challenging, are the Steelers even good? You have some saying, and I get it, Fox Sports, they're always saying something crazy. But you got some saying they're not going to win another game all season long. What are we talking about? And this is not the first time that we have been through this. It is not the first time that we've had to deal with the overreactions. It's not the first time, even recently, that you lose a football game and the whole world comes melting down to say that the Pittsburgh Steelers are done. This is the worst team in NFL history. And I don't understand how they won 10 games. We've been here. We've been here more than once this season. But the Eagles game was rough. And the passing game looks bad. And Russell Wilson looks like half of Russell Wilson without 100% of George Pickens. Does that change anything for you? Do you sit here currently and say Russell Wilson is still guaranteed to be a key component to the Pittsburgh Steelers' future? Or after everything that has been said and done, do you sit here and say, maybe, just maybe, it is time to wait until we see how this thing plays out?
Yeah, I was going to say it's an incomplete answer right now. We just don't know because this offense without George Pickens is not good. But next year, are we expecting George Pickens to still be in the position that he's in? Is he going to be the only key component in the passing game outside of Pat Freiermuth? No, you would have to hope that one, Roman Wilson is healthy next year and is contributing next year. Two, you have to hope that the Pittsburgh Steelers go out and actually address the need of wide receiver too. And if they do, maybe Russell Wilson looks different. So I do think that it is an incomplete answer right now because you need to see how he does in these last 3 weeks. And more specifically, you need to see what he does in the playoffs. The Steelers have been 9-8, 10-7 with quarterbacks the likes of Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph. So if they go 11-6, 10-7 with Russell Wilson, there's no difference there. What happens in the playoffs, to me, is what determines what happens with Russell Wilson. And it's not as simple as win, lose, good, bad. It's as simple as how do you perform? If you lose, but you looked good and you were a good quarterback and you elevated your game because it's the postseason, that's when you want your quarterbacks to elevate your game, then I think this is a realistic possibility. But until then, it's an incomplete answer for me.
Yeah, I don't disagree. What happened with George was the biggest nightmare the Pittsburgh Steelers could have faced all season long. It was their worst fear, and it came true. And here we are. The Pittsburgh Steelers need to win games without their biggest star on the field. And don't get me wrong, you beat the Ravens, and you look really good doing it, and Russell Wilson looks like Doug I. The answer comes Sunday morning is, oh, yeah, Russ is getting a deal. And maybe that changes against Kansas City, but Sunday morning, it's Russ is getting a deal. But he could look bad. And if he looks bad back-to-back weeks, you're looking at it going, okay, well, there are now questions that need to be answered. Like you said, can you get Russ and add somebody so that this nightmare scenario does not happen again? Is Russ worth not being able to have somebody who avoids this nightmare scenario in 2025? These are all questions that need to be answered because you cannot go into next year. And I get it, that's so far away, but you cannot go into next year with the same situation that you're in. And you can't sign your quarterback and say, well, we got him, even though he's not that good when George is gone, but we don't have anybody else at wide receiver. And yeah, we got Roman Wilson coming. That's a risk, massive risk. Oh, we could draft somebody. Risk, massive risk. You have no idea if they're going to work out quickly enough to be evolved and ready to go in a place where the Steelers would desperately need them, like right now. So that's priority one. It's crazy to say, but the Pittsburgh Steelers' biggest offensive priority this offseason is figuring out the quarterback situation while simultaneously figuring out the wide receiver position, because you have to be hand in hand in those. You cannot go into next season and say quarterback solved, wide receiver isn't. Wide receiver solved, quarterback isn't. Nope. If they don't work together, if you cannot fill both needs, you pretty much haven't filled either, because you are setting yourself up for the same situation and taking another risk where maybe George gets hurt where you don't want him to get hurt, and your quarterback can't get you to where you need to get him. So again, that could change Sunday morning when Russ goes out there and throws for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, or the Steelers could lose by 20 and Russ could look terrible. And we could be saying, well, Russ ain't, why would you bring Russ back? Why would you even consider bringing Russ back? He's nothing without George Pickens. There are still so many questions to be answered when it comes to Russell Wilson. And I get it, he's looked good, but it's like the Najee thing. You go back to week 7, 8, 9, 6, 7, 8, excuse me. Najee's getting a deal. Massive deal. Massive deal. You look at it now, you're going, nah, we're good. Everybody in Steelers Nation's going, we're good. Thanks. Appreciate your time. That's what could happen to Russ in the next couple of weeks. So where we stand right now, like you said, major questions to be answered. And honestly, in the offseason, like I'm not signing a quarterback at all, no matter who you are, until I understand what the wide receiver situation simultaneously could look like. You're not going to obviously just say, oh, well, we need a wide receiver first. No, but you got to make sure that the money matches everywhere. And those are your two biggest needs. So that's where we stand when it comes to Russell Wilson. All right. With that said, we talked to Deontay Johnson and some breaking news that jumped on here, right? Literally seconds before we were getting called out in the comments. Hey, it's 4:01. What are we doing? Well, we're waiting on the news. We're waiting on the big news. George Pickens timeline that is much more exciting than it was 24 hours ago. Russell Wilson. Now it's time for that time of the week, my friend. It's Friday. Feels like Saturday. Feels a little bit like a Sunday even. I don't know. I don't know what day it feels like, but it does not feel like Friday afternoon. Everybody's getting ready for Christmas. I still have not bought my wife anything, which I know what I... Yeah.
Did you say you haven't bought anything?
No, nothing. I know what I'm getting.
December 20th, sir.
I know. I'll figure it out. I know what I'm getting. I know what I'm getting. The problem is that, like, if I'm not sitting, when I leave here, I walk downstairs to my wife. Okay. So when I come back in the door, my wife would be there, you know, and on the weekends I work, so I can't do anything. You see where I'm running into some trickiness here? You see where things are getting a little complicated. So we're going to figure it out. Okay. We do every year. We'll be okay. To be very honest, the only person I did buy presents for is my mom and my brother, because I happened to walk into a store that I will not name out loud, and they were both sitting right there. And I went, there it is. Merry Christmas, guys. And I snagged them and left. And we'll get the rest of them. I'm not worried about it, dude. It's Christmas. Everybody gets Christmas presents, no matter how late your Christmas presents are, especially if you got a game plan. I got a game plan.
As long as you have a game plan, that's all that matters.
I would say it, but you know, this would be the one episode that you listen to ever. Yep. Yeah. So we'll keep it on the back burner. With that said, let's make our picks, because I'm gonna need some luck. You know, we're crunch time right now for me and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm gonna need some luck on my side. Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens, Week 16. No Diontae Johnson, no George Pickens, no Deshaun Elliott. TJ Watt though, and we're gonna talk about him here in a second when I get to my turn. Week 16, M&T Bank Stadium. Isaiah Likely said, you know, we got Flock Nation's got to keep it a home game. Got to keep it a home game. I took that as a challenge to the Pittsburgh Steelers fan base to say, show up or don't show up, your decision, but we don't expect you to show up. So take that as you will, Terrible Towels. I'm going to toss it to you. What's our scores? What do we got? What's the spread?
Yeah, if we head on over to our good pals over at DraftKings, the Steelers are still heavy underdogs on the road against the Baltimore Ravens, despite winning 9 of the last 10 matchups against them. 6.5-point underdogs to the Baltimore Ravens and a 44.5-point over-under. Expecting a good bit of points. Expecting at least one of these teams to go over 20 points, which hasn't happened in multiple years.
I was going to say, what is Vegas doing here? What is the Vegas spread in this?
They always know something.
Yeah, but it seems as if they're drunk on this one, or they sent the intern to do this, because nothing's accurate. You're telling me that a Pittsburgh Steelers Baltimore Ravens game is going to be a 7-point difference? Well, 7 points, and somebody's going to score over 20 points? Nah. And then somebody would have to score 25 points if the other team scored 19. It's as if the new guy showed up and said, "Oh, I'll take the Ravens Steelers. I got this one. Don't even worry about it, Joe. I'm going to take care about this one." And he came up with this spread and this over-under. I'm going the under. We're going to start there. I'm going the under. Not feeling good about that at all. Going the under. Nobody likes betting the under, but we're doing it. I'll give you my reasoning behind these picks before I actually give you a score. No George Pickens is terrifying, but And I know we talked about how maybe a running back change is needed for the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday. But last year in the freezing rain, you want to know who came through for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Najee Harris. As I sat in a motel waiting for the snow to stop so that I could potentially get to the game, and then said, screw it, I'm just waiting for the morning. Sketchiest motel I have ever stayed in my entire life. Shout out the Motel 8, or the Super 8, I think it is. 8 Pizza Hut. Excuse me. Pizza Hut pizza at 3 a.m. That was given to me, gifted. Shout out to the Pizza Hut people. I watched Najee Harris lead the Pittsburgh Steelers to a victory. You want to know who else helped the Pittsburgh Steelers go to a victory before he hurt his knee in that game? Mr. TJ Watt. And guess who the Pittsburgh Steelers have healthy, ready to go, and fired up for this one? Najee Harris and TJ Watt. This is not a Russell Wilson's got to be concerned he's the reason they win or lose this football game. This is not a George Pickens needs to put up 100 yards and 3 touchdowns for the Pittsburgh Steelers to win this football game. This is who wins the battle up front. I don't care how bad the Steelers' offensive line has been. They always play better in this football game. Always. And it's determined on both sides of the ball defensively, not offensively. I don't care about Lamar Jackson. I don't care about Derrick Henry. I don't care about George Pickens or Russell Wilson. I care about whose defense is going to do more than the other defense to make sure that they win. And the Pittsburgh Steelers defense right now looks pretty good. And TJ Watt is playing through an ankle sprain, which tells me that he will do whatever he needs to do to win this football game. So there are no massive questions to me when it comes to, can the Steelers score enough points? In Baltimore Ravens versus Pittsburgh Steelers football games, you don't need to score enough points. You just need Chris Boswell to hit a couple of field goals, and you're good to go. And I think the Steelers will do more than that this time and still have the upper hand. TJ Watt's my X factor in this one, hands down, no questions asked. I think TJ goes off for a game that if he does miss the final 2 games of the season, we already, the stamp is there. Defensive Player of the Year. No questions asked. Everybody watched the NFL honors in February because TJ is about to win an award instead of go to dinner with his wife, all pissed off. I'm going Pittsburgh Steelers 16. Baltimore Ravens 13 in this one. It is not fun. It is not a good game, but it is old school, muddy, punchy in the mouth. Nobody even realizes that it's 16-13 football because TJ Watt's going nuts on the other side of the football. Everybody else is going nuts. Yeah, Rex Ryan and everybody else could overreact about Russell Wilson on Monday morning. I don't care. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to walk away. Chris Boswell is once again going to cement himself as the Pittsburgh Steelers MVP, although TJ Watt's going to have a game so good that we forget about it again on Wednesday. And the Pittsburgh Steelers walk away winners and AFC North champions at M&T Bank Stadium. It's snowy. I expect it to remain snowy. And I'm telling you, 16-13, I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Your score and everything that you just said over the last 2.5 minutes makes so much sense that it probably won't happen. That's the way I look at this, because yes, I could go with all the narratives. Neither team has scored 20 points since 2021. I think, to go back over to my pick, I think both teams get 20 points at least in this game. I don't think it's a pretty 20 points, but I think both teams get over the 20 points in this game. The problem that I have is Justin Tucker going to miss multiple field goals again? Probably not. He might. There's a chance that he does, more so than ever before. But in this game, is he going to miss multiple field goals again? I'm going to say the odds are unlikely on that one. The problem that I have with the Steelers is that the last time they won, they needed Justin Tucker to miss, and they relied heavily, in all caps, heavily on George Pickens on the offensive side of the ball. He had 89 receiving yards out of the 205 total receiving yards. They didn't run the ball very well. They've never really relied on Pat Freiermuth, which is, I wanted to have solace in, hey, Pat's going to have a big game because I always have faith in Pat Freiermuth. But historically, he averages 3 catches and 30 yards against the Baltimore Ravens. So I'm just not sure where the offense is coming from. I think the defense makes a couple splash plays. I think the offense gets some points off of them, but I think ultimately it's not going to be enough at M&T Bank Stadium. The Steelers fall 24-20 because Justin Tucker actually hits his field goals this year or this game.
I think what's crazy, you made a couple, obviously, like, I support your answers here, but you made a couple of wild statements in this one, all right? So I'm not going off of history, but I am including Pat Freiermuth's history.
That's true. I did do that. I just, again, the history of just scores versus one player never being in the game plan, to me, is a little bit easier to look at.
The second one is Justin Tucker most likely is not going to miss multiple field goals for like the 8th time this season, which is probably the most likely thing you could bet on in the NFL this season is Justin Tucker missing multiple field goals, which, I mean, he's still the greatest kicker of all time, so you never know. But I don't know, man.
Listen, of the two of us, I prefer to be wrong.
I know. I think the point total is where you got me. Like, if you were like 20-19, Justin Tucker hits all his field goals, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know, but probably 20. Could you imagine a 24-20 Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens? Who scores the touchdowns in Pittsburgh? You got a guess on this?
I think one of them is Najee Harris because they're going to get a turnover and it's just going to be give it to Najee at the 1. He bowls through. And I do think that Darnell Washington ends up with a touchdown in this one.
Hell yeah. All right. That's a win. In my eyes, that's...
You're like, screw the AFC North. Mount Washington got a touchdown.
Yeah, Darnell's coming back strong, my friend. You get, strong. After last week and the 85 clips that I've watched from different angles of Darnell Washington just pile driving Darius Slay into the stands, that's a win. That's a win. I'd be all about it. That's a tough one. Do you have the Steelers winning the AFC North if they lose this weekend?
I do. I think they lose this weekend. I think the Houston Texans give them a hand, and I think they win out over the Chiefs and the Bengals. That's what I'm thinking as of right now.
Wow. You're saying that they lose to the Ravens and beat the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes?
Yep. I think the Chiefs will have less to play for.
I don't disagree there. Wow. Okay. All right. We'll see what happens. I'm excited. I'm 16-13. Nick's 24-20 in this one. We'll see. I think at this point I might have won the season, but
yeah, by far. I'm just picking with my brain here, not trying to come back and make any miraculous, picks come back. No. I know I've lost that one. Yes.
We'll try something at the last week of the season. Maybe the playoffs. You never know. Though it would be tough. You never know. We'll get there.
I was going to say that typical game show thing. Last round is worth 1,000,000 points.
Yeah, we could. We'll never know. We never know. This is triple the wins, actually. And we have to guess the score, which you almost came close. That would have been 3 points. Let's be honest. That's a 3-point shot if you get the score 100% correct. So we're close. All right, guys. With that said, that's our picks for Week 16. Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens, 16-13 me. Nick's got them losing 24-20. It's time to dive into your questions. We're going to finish off the show the same way we do every day, so make sure that you're tossing all your questions into the chat. We'll answer all of them before we head out of here. Nick, what do we got?
Let's kick it off with Steelers fan 8. Appreciate you as always. Says, I say we're going to come back after that Eagles loss, win out the rest of the season. Do you see that as well as Steelers fan 8 does?
I think it could happen. I do think it could happen. There's going to take a lot that needs to happen for it to happen. Kansas City, I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, strangely, an overtime win over the Browns did something to me. Overtime? I don't know.
They won 21-7.
Yeah, excuse me. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. A win over the Browns.
Yeah.
It just did something for me. Like, I watched that game and I just went, the Chiefs are actually good, man. They're just a good team. So they are my biggest concern right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I could still see it happening. I said it the past couple of weeks. I'll remain with that narrative. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have an edge over the Kansas City Chiefs if they play well and everybody's healthy. That is massive ifs. But to be very honest, right now it's about staying healthy through Baltimore, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers' top priority. And if they can do that, they set themselves up great. But if they, at this point, anything can happen, and the NFL is getting hit with injuries everywhere. So you just don't know what's going to happen. And because of that, definitely some question marks. If everybody's healthy, yeah, the Steelers have a really good opportunity to do so. One injury, and well, we see what happens every single week across the NFL and with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you just never know. But I do give it a good shot.
Let's go over to Cody Silva, who says, I don't like playing the what if game, but what if Pittsburgh went out and got a number 2 wide receiver at the beginning of the year? We would have more wins and we wouldn't be in the position that we're in right now. What are your thoughts?
Nah, I still think they'd be in the same position. I'd still think they'd be 10-4. I still think you lose to Philadelphia. Philadelphia is the best team in the second best team in the NFL. Buffalo is the best team in the NFL. And they're probably the scariest team in the NFL. Philadelphia is. So I still think you lose to Philadelphia. I still think you lose to Cleveland because I don't think that had anything to do with George. I think it had everything to do with that's just a game the Pittsburgh Steelers lose, and it's weird that you should expect them to lose it, but you do almost. Dallas, that's just classic Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Colts were crazy. I mean, the Colts were just the Colts. You change quarterbacks. Joe Flacco says, screw it. I'll do it one more time. He came out there. He looked so good that the Colts might have screwed up their entire season and future because of what he did to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I still think they're in this exact same spot, but they are looking better against the Baltimore Ravens if that number 2 is healthy. Certainly. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers outlook is much more promising. There are much less people concerned about where the Pittsburgh Steelers are headed or where they are not headed because of their wide receiver position and the injury at it. But I don't think it changes their record and where they stand currently. No.
Let's go down to Egyptian Roughneck. Appreciate you as always. Says Mahomes' ankle injury makes me believe that we can beat the Kansas City Chiefs.
I agree. But at the same time, like Mahomes getting hurt is almost better for Mahomes. I don't know why, but the guy is nuts. He does crazy things. He is the exact opposite of what you expect a quarterback to be. So I want to say yes, but I don't agree with it. I just, there's something in me that is more scared of Patrick Mahomes. Not that, I think the Steelers are scared of him, but just me as somebody who does not like the Kansas City Chiefs because they win all the time. I respect the hell out of them, but nobody wants to see the Chiefs win another Super Bowl. Nobody. We're good. We got a Christmas movie out of it. We're chilling. At this point, Mahomes scares probably everybody whenever he gets hurt, and I think it might have helped them. I really do. I really think it might have helped them.
Let's jump down to Matthew, who says, would you rather the Steelers go out and sign T. Higgins this offseason or draft a top wide receiver with their first-round pick?
I'd rather them sign T. Higgins. I would. I think the Steelers have bigger needs that they can fill in the NFL draft that are less pressing and that you're taking less of a risk on, whereas in T. Higgins is a guy you know what you're getting. He's worth top dollar. Go pay him top dollar. I'd go T. Higgins. I'd probably go T. Higgins over most of the options out there because I get it. The NFL draft's loaded, but like T. Higgins is just a guy that you've seen take advantage of the Pittsburgh Steelers for years. If he's healthy, he's phenomenal. You go out and you get him, you know what you got, and you make him your really true, reliable number 2 for a couple of years. And now you, at the same time, if George, for some reason, some character issues or off the field stuff or contract negotiation nonsense happens, you don't have this pressing, oh my gosh, situation on your hands. You could kind of maneuver and weaver your way to a solution there one way or another. And I think that works out better in the Pittsburgh Steelers' favor. So I'd go T. Higgins over most options.
From wide receiver to running back, let's go to Josh's question. What running backs would be on the Steelers' list to acquire in the offseason, whether it be via trade, free agency, or the NFL draft?
It's tough because free agency's got nobody, like absolutely nobody. The NFL draft's got a bunch. You could go Ashton Genty. You can go, who's the dude out of not Ohio State, Michigan, who I'm just slipping mine because I got flu brain right now. But the NFL drafts
in Michigan, is that who you talked about?
Yeah. And then you got both of them in Ohio State. Henderson and again,
Judkins.
Flubrant. Thank you very much. The NFL draft's loaded. You could probably make a trade, but who you trading for is the big question here. Like, who you trying to get? And to be honest with you, I think when it came to free agency, James Conner was a name that wasn't going to come back to Pittsburgh, was definitely the biggest name on the market. He just inked a 3-year deal. So he's not going anywhere with the Arizona Cardinals. So I don't think the options are very big. What I could tell you is most likely going to happen for the Steelers is Jaylen Warren returns on a 1-year, 10-year deal, and you draft somebody in the 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th round of the NFL draft and plug him behind him with Cordero Patterson being your 3rd running back in 2025.
Yeah, I know not everybody watches college football. Not everybody watches, especially like Iowa games, because Iowa has a good running back going into the draft.
Yeah.
But this weekend, there's going to be a lot of running backs that are going to put their names into very good positions for the NFL draft. I mean, tonight, Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame, guy out of Arizona State. He's not playing this weekend.
Oh, dude, the big dude.
Yes, there's a lot of running
guy.
backs in this college football playoff that are going to play themselves into a good draft position next year. But the problem is there's so many of them that some of them have to fall. And I think that's what the Steelers are going to eventually take advantage of if they can and if the dominoes fall in the right way.
That's how it'll always. I mean, Bucky Irving is a 1st-round talent that doesn't go in the 1st round. And that's how it goes every year. Running backs, unless you're Ashton Genty, are not going to go in the 1st round. And because of that, everything else is going to fall. Beanie Bishop explained it on the Christian Kuntz podcast yesterday. You're watching your position because if guys aren't going, you're just falling back. And that's how it's going to work. So there will be guys in the 3rd to 5th round that are number 2 quality running backs. And it happens all the time. And you hope that those guys turn into something bigger. I mean, there's a couple of Denver's running back at this point, not Javonte Williams, the guy that's overpassed him out of Notre Dame. He was a 4th-round pick. He looks phenomenal. Kyron Williams is a former 3rd or 4th-round pick, obviously turned into an absolute stud in L.A. There's James Conner, former 3rd-round pick, absolute stud out of Pitt. I mean, that's what happens every year.
Speaking of running backs, Cam Skattebo is the name I couldn't think of. The guy out of Arizona State.
Yes, Cam Skattebo. Yeah, the white dude. He's freaking unbelievable, man. He is. I can't. First time I watched him play, I was like, "Oh, that's a fullback." No, it's not. That's a running back. This is unbelievable. He looks like Mike Allstott. He really does.
Let's go over to Demetrius. Appreciate you again. Says, any chance Justin Fields' injury is a business decision? He will make at least $15 million next year. Why would his agent let him risk it? Being a running Q power.
No. First off, business decisions are made in game, but they're not. Nobody's calling Mike Tomlin and saying, "Hey, you're not letting my guy play this week." I get
And if that does happen, there's no chance Tomlin's going to be like, "Yeah, we're not going to say anything about that." Like, it's Devondre Campbell. Like, you're gone.
Yeah, you're gone. That's what happens. If a business decision is made in the NFL, that player is released immediately. Like, there's no questions asked. That's also not who Justin Fields is. Like, he's a full team player. I got a lot of respect for what Justin has done and the role he's taken on this season, and he embraces it. And also abdominal injuries, like, they're serious. So I would be more concerned that this is long-term than it is a business decision for Justin Fields.
Let's jump over to Mason, who says, looking ahead to the playoffs, are you more worried about potentially playing Denver or the LA Chargers?
The LA Chargers, just because of Justin Herbert. Better quarterback situation. Bo Nix is good, and I think the Denver Broncos, I mean, people are going to find it hard to believe over the next couple of years, but I think Russ and the Denver Broncos both won that trade somehow, and they both look really good moving forward. But I would go facing a rookie quarterback any day in the playoffs over playing a veteran like Justin Herbert and a coach like Jim Harbaugh. I get that Sean Payton's also that coach. I understand that, but he's got a rookie quarterback and a bunch of rookies on the offensive side of the ball that at some point you're going to struggle and you're going to have to overcome it. You're not going to be able to. It's different when you got a veteran. So I would much rather play the Denver Broncos. I'm much more worried about LA.
Let's go over to HY, who says, how do you rate Joey Porter Jr.'s performance? We seem to have a tough time handling elite wide receivers.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think Joey's been playing pretty all right when the Steelers play man, and we went over this. I want to say it was
A lot.
earlier in the week. Yeah, but we touched on this pretty heavy. Like when the Steelers play man coverage, Joey plays really, really well. When he doesn't play well is when the Steelers drop into zone, which makes it look like guys like AJ Brown and everybody else is catching these passes underneath them and they're beating them. No, Joey's just playing a soft zone because that's what he's told to play, and it's not working. It's not what the Steelers are meant to do. Diontae Johnson comes up with his interceptions in man coverage. Joey Porter plays his best football in man coverage. That's what the Steelers should be doing, and they don't do it. They used to be a really man-heavy defense. They switched to a very zone-heavy defense, and they haven't gone back, and that's what's hurting Joey Porter Jr. I don't think it's him. I think it's the scheme that the Steelers are running and how it does not fit him. When it's in man-to-man and he's got the duty to shut down an elite receiver, I mean, go back and watch Philly. He does it. He shuts down A.J. Brown most of the time.
Let's jump to Marlon Lewis, who says, wouldn't it make sense to sign a quarterback to a long-term deal when they prove it that they don't need a defense and special teams to make consistent plays?
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. I also think that we're being way too tough on Russell Wilson. Like, I think it's both sides of the coin here. Like you obviously want to sign a quarterback that you are very confident in and that you don't need these things to happen. I 100% agree with that. But I also think that every time the Pittsburgh Steelers lose, everybody looks at Russ like he's the worst quarterback on the planet. And that is just not the case. Like Russ has had some good success with the Steelers. Is it the success that Patrick Mahomes and all these guys, Josh Allen is having? No, but it's more success than Justin Herbert's having. It's more success than Lamar Jackson is having. It's more success than Joe Burrow. Like all these names, all these big giant names who are not succeeding. Look at those guys and say, well, in comparison, the Steelers are 10-4. And yeah, if Russ's job is just to win, but he costs half the money and he wins, he's doing his job. Like that's all the Steelers brought him to do at the end of the day. We could go back to the beginning of the season. The Steelers offense was not designed for Russell Wilson to win with it. It was designed for Russell Wilson not to lose with it. And that's what he's doing. He's not losing. I get it. He lost to Philly, but I think everybody overreacts a little bit when the Steelers lose, especially when people don't play very well. Mm-hmm. But I think Russ is playing very well this season for what the Steelers have asked of him.
Yeah, and he lost to Philly. Guess who else lost to Philly? The 9 other teams that they played just before they played the Steelers. Yeah. So I think that has to be taken into account sometimes as well. Yeah. Let's go over to Duffy Buckets, who says, GP, by not playing these last 3 weeks, has made himself a $30 million a year contract. True or false?
Is the answer yes and no? Is an answer true and false? Because it's true. He has earned himself a $30 million a year contract by not being on the field. It's false because, I mean, his character concerns are the reason he wouldn't get a $30 million a year contract. And that's held true this entire time. It's not what George can do on the field. It's what George does off the field. It's what George does when he's not getting the ball or the team's losing or, he's getting into scuffles or Mike Tomlin's trying to calm him down and he isn't able to calm down. It's all those things. So it's the off the field concerns. It's the showing up late to work. It's that kind of stuff that is an issue for George that would stop George from getting paid. And I think what it comes down to is how is he going to handle it when negotiations start slow? Because they're going to start slow. The Steelers are not going to walk in there and say, all right, George, here's 3 years, $30 million a year, $60 million guaranteed. Stay with the Pittsburgh Steelers. No, they're going to walk in there and they're going to say, here's 3 years, $22 million a year, $20 million guaranteed. And how is he going to respond when that happens? That will determine if he gets anywhere close to $30 million or another contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Let's jump over to Marlon. This is a great question for you because you predicted the Steelers to win a few minutes ago. Marlon says, if we needed 3 turnovers to beat the Ravens last time, how many will we need to win this one?
I'd say at least 2. I'd say at least 2. You need at least 2 to win this game. with the way the Pittsburgh Steelers are built and the injuries that are surrounding them. But I feel pretty good about that too. I do. TJ Watt's about to have a game, and all you need is another one, because I would imagine TJ gets one of them. That's how I look at it. And on top of that, the Ravens might be down a guard, which is massive for Cam Hayward. I feel pretty good about 2. I'd say 2 is the magic number. 2 and maybe 3 Chris Boswell field goals.
Let's go over to Chris, who says, how confident are you that Arthur Smith comes with a creative game plan for this game? Like, where are the passes to tight ends out of 12 and 13 personnel?
Yeah, that's a great question. Great question. I would love to know as well, my friend. I would love to know. How confident am I that Arthur Smith comes out with a creative game plan? More confident than I would be if they didn't lose and get embarrassed by Philly with the running game. Because if it was just Russ didn't look good because George wasn't out there and they couldn't do anything, okay, totally fine. But you looked embarrassing in the running game. The Steelers were embarrassed on the ground. And Mike Tomlin, I mean, he said it 4 times in his press conference that it was the coaching, even at one point he said we have to play better, and then followed that up before the next question came by saying coach better, because everybody knows that the coaching was atrocious. So with that said, I have more confidence than I would have if it was just another day and the Steelers couldn't get it done, and you could look at George Pickens as the reason. But the fact that it was plain as day or clear as day that Arthur Smith got out coached and the ground game was embarrassing makes me feel like he's going to come out here with a better game plan against the Ravens.
Speaking of the tight ends, Derek wants to know, why don't we use number 80, Mount Washington, in the red zone more?
Again, I would love to know the answer to that one. I would love it. I just don't know if there is. It makes no sense. Why are you not George is not out there. So what are the other options? You're not using Mike Williams. You might as well use number 80 and see what happens there. I think that makes so much sense. The Steelers just ain't about it. The Darnell Washington usage has gone right downhill. And don't get me wrong, he's absolutely destroying it in the running game. But you got to do more in the passing game with him. You have to. He showed his worth, and you got to use it. But I don't know. I would love to be able to answer that question for you. But we all know that the only person that can answer that is Arthur Smith, and the only person who won't is Arthur Smith.
Let's go over to Dion, who says, with all the issues in the secondary and the defense overall, is it a possibility that the Steelers don't bring back Terrell Austin next year, especially after the Philly game? So, Noah, is Terrell Austin coaching for his job these last few weeks?
No, he's not. He's on a contract extension. The Steelers and the Steelers organization love TA. The players love TA. I think TA is a very smart coach. And on top of that, okay, you could go back and listen to 85 Keith Butler interviews where he hints at the fact that he does not call the defense. So everybody bitching about the defense should not be looking at him. And it's the same thing with TA. This is Mike Tomlin's defense. It's been Mike Tomlin's defense. Mike Tomlin's the one who calls the plays. Mike Tomlin's the one who makes the decisions. And TA's got a good hand in it. He does. But when they're playing bad defense or playing bad zones or this or that, it's Mike T, man. And if Mike T ain't changing it, he's not going to fire the guy who's sitting around being the scapegoat. So I would say no. It would surprise me, especially because I believe he got a 3-year deal after last season.
Mm-hmm. It is funny to me that people don't look at defensive head coaches the same way they look at offensive head coaches. Like I bet you nobody could tell me right now without Googling who the offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams is, because it's Sean McVay. It's Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. Same should be well known about defensive head coaches like a Mike Tomlin. So, and exactly. Why can't I think of his name? Sean McDermott up in Buffalo.
Yes, so, exactly.
Let's go over to Brandon Smith, who says, hey, Noah, I heard a good question on the other day and wanted to ask you and Nick, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is it that the Steelers run the gauntlet and win number 7? I'm personally at a 4, says Brandon.
Oh, 1 to 10. 4 feels like a good number. Four feels like, I would say 4. I'd peak at a 5. I'd peak at a 5. It depends. I mean, that could change on a week-to-week basis. Let's say best case scenario, you land in there as the 3 seed and you get to play the Chargers, or it would probably be the Chargers at this point. You're playing the Chargers. I'd feel good about the Chargers. If you don't have to go to Kansas City, you're going to Buffalo, but maybe you luck out. Buffalo loses to Denver, would never happen. So
Baltimore
you're going
drops, maybe, and Baltimore plays in Buffalo.
There you go. No, because Baltimore would play Kansas City. So you're going to Baltimore, or you're going to Buffalo. I would say at that point things are getting really difficult. Really difficult. I would say I'd peak at a 5. I would say I'd peak at a 5. Where do you stand?
Yeah, if you go more than 5, you're saying it's more likely to happen than not, and I just can't say that.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's probably a 3 just because of right now, the 2 top teams in the AFC, if you have to go to their house, they look very difficult. And I don't see the Ravens dropping to the 7 seed, playing the Bills, and miraculously beating the Bills. That way the Steelers play the Texans at home in the divisional round. That's, to me, the best path for the Steelers. Not to say that they can't go out there and shock everybody and upset the Bills on the road. They nearly did it last year with Mason Rudolph, but all things have to go well for them to not only be able to accomplish that, but to then win 2 more games, including one against probably the Detroit Lions, or maybe the Philadelphia Eagles in a rematch. It's tough to say. It does happen. So I'm going to go with the 3 on this one.
Yeah. It's a tough time. Ask me in a week. You beat Kansas City and Baltimore. That number's much higher. Yeah, much higher, I'll tell you.
Let's go to Vibin with the Dogs, who says, "What's up, boys? When can Deshaun Elliott come back, and will TJ be on a snap count this Saturday?"
I do expect TJ to be on some snap count, not a large one, not a very significant snap count, but definitely some sort of snap count. I would imagine Nick Herbig gets a good chunk of play, and so does Preston Smith in this one. But in those key moments, it'll be TJ Watt. When it comes to Deshaun Elliott, I would say week 18 is when I expect Deshaun Elliott to come back. Hamstring injuries are tough, or groin injuries are tough. You don't want them to last longer than they are. The fact that he is trying to practice certainly gives some positive signs, but the Steelers are not going to rush him back sooner than they need to. I would guess week 18, possibly the playoffs, but they are not going to put him on the field until he's 100%, just for how fragile groin injuries are and how long-term they can become if you don't manage them correctly.
Let's finish it off with this one from Dion, who says, "Arthur Smith's name has been floated around for the New York Jets head coaching job. If he leaves, who's your best OC candidate to replace him if you have one?"
Oh, that's so tough. I don't even know who the OC candidates would be this upcoming season. Gerard Johnson out of Houston is a name that the Steelers were very interested in last year. He could be one. I'm trying to think of quarterback coaches. That's where they would go. They'd go quarterback coaches or connections to Tomlin in the past. But quarterback coaches Ben Johnson's going to get a job somewhere, and his quarterback coach is going to become the offensive coordinator. So you're not going Detroit. Somebody from the McVay coaching tree. That would be my guess.
Let me ask you this. Is there anybody currently on the Steelers offensive coaching staff that you could see potentially being an offensive coordinator? Maybe a Tom Arth or a Zach Escalante, who I think have both been fairly impressive in their first years in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I could see Tom Arth. It might be too early for Tom Arth, and the Steelers might have a little bit of PTSD to give it to Tom Arth and say, here you go. I could see them. My thing is I could see them approaching a situation like Arthur Smith, where they just go, we need somebody who's established. We're not willing to take a risk anymore. And maybe that's not Tom Arth, where, I mean, I don't know if that guy's out there. You're going to have to see who gets fired at the end of the season, which there will be more names to come that get fired, certainly. But right now, a lot of them are defensive guys. So you're not going out and Robert Saleh isn't coming to Pittsburgh, or, Matt Eberflus isn't coming to Pittsburgh, and the offensive coordinator that they fired in Chicago is not coming to Pittsburgh. But I could see I could see a guy like Tom Arth being the next candidate to be the offensive coordinator. That being said, I think Arthur Smith stays one more year in Pittsburgh and then goes to be a head coach. And I think that opens up a much bigger scenario to where Tom Arth could naturally step into that position in 2026.
Let's close out this episode with our guy. Unlimited Moonball says, here is the dream scenario. We pick up Diontae Johnson, go on a revenge tour, beating the Broncos, the Ravens, the Bills, and then all Pennsylvania Super Bowl, baby. Eagles in the Super Bowl with TJ winning Super Bowl MVP. That is indeed the dream scenario.
It is. It would be a beautiful time. It would be a beautiful time. I'll tell you right now, man. I would love nothing more than to go down south, spend my February in good old Louisiana, eat some crawfish and some gumbo, and watch the Pittsburgh Steelers win a Super Bowl. That would be a beautiful February. Be a beautiful February.
I would take your ghosts from your house down with you.
I could, dude, and get rid of them all. Just be like, hey, stop coming. Let's stay here. It'd be great. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Pittsburgh in February, but it is not fun. It's like the least fun time to be in Pittsburgh. So I'd be all about it. I think that would be, I mean, look, it's all beating the Broncos is realistic. Beating the Ravens is realistic. Beating the Bills would be very difficult, but I'm not going to say no. Beating the Eagles might be the most difficult thing on this list. Picking up Diontae Johnson might be where we cross the line into insanity. So that might be where we go there, but I love it. And it would be the dream scenario. And if it does happen, Mr. Unlimited Boo Balls, you're getting a Deontay Johnson jersey. I'll make that promise to you right now, which I wouldn't bank on that, but you got my word, pal.
That's a wrap for today then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. And thank you guys for bearing with me throughout the week as I overcame the Christmas sickness. We're feeling better. So hopefully come Monday, we're back and ready to load. Let me provide some updates for the schedule next week because it is a little bit crazy. Sunday, I will have a special guest on Sunday morning, 9 a.m. for the podcast. That will be our Monday episode. Then we'll go Monday, Tuesday, nothing on Christmas because obviously the game will be played on Christmas. And then I believe the plan is to return on Thursday. I'm not 100% on that one. The plan is to return on Thursday. That's confirmed by Nick. He knows. Per sources. So for everybody after the game, Sunday, we will be back 9 a.m. With that said, thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back on Sunday. I will be back for the walkover tomorrow. Enjoy a chilly but a wonderful day in the city of Pittsburgh. Peace.